300,000 years ago, a new species emerged in Africa, a species that would change the destiny of our planet forever. More intelligent, more adaptable, and more relentless than any other. They competed, they survived, and they conquered. This is the story of Homo sapiens, the last human species standing, and how they came to dominate the world. Picture this. While dinosaurs ruled for over 160 million years, we've managed to transform the entire planet in just a fraction of that time. Our ancestors walked out of Africa, spread across continents, and eventually reached every corner of the globe. Along the way, they encountered other human species, cousins in our evolutionary family tree, the Neanderthals, with their powerful bodies and large brains, the mysterious Denisovans in Asia, the diminutive Homo floresiensis on remote islands. Yet today, only we remain. If you want to understand how a single species outcompeted the Neanderthals, built mighty empires, and eventually reached the moon, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and prepare yourself for an extraordinary journey through human evolution. We'll explore how our ancestors survived against impossible odds, developed complex language that allowed them to cooperate in ways no species had before, and ultimately created art, science, and technology that would transform not just their world, but worlds beyond our own. The story of humanity isn't just ancient history, it's the greatest survival tale ever told, and you're part of it. Homo sapiens weren't the first humans, but they were the last ones standing. Imagine Africa, around 300,000 years ago. The continent was home to a remarkable species called Homo heidelbergensis, our direct ancestors. These early humans had larger brains than previous species, used more sophisticated tools, and had begun mastering fire. From this ancestral population emerged the first Homo sapiens. But here's what makes our story truly fascinating. We weren't alone. While early Homo sapiens were developing in Africa, other human species were thriving elsewhere. In Europe and parts of Asia, the Neanderthals had adapted perfectly to cold climates with their stocky builds and powerful muscles. They crafted tools, buried their dead, and even created art. Further east in Asia, the mysterious Denisovans roamed, a species we only discovered in 2010 when scientists analyzed a tiny finger bone from a Siberian cave. Think about that for a moment. Not long ago, in evolutionary terms, at least 3 different human species walked the Earth simultaneously. We shared the planet with our cousins, and occasionally our paths crossed. When Homo sapiens eventually ventured out of Africa around 70,000 years ago, these encounters became more frequent. And here's where things get incredibly personal. Those meetings didn't just end with competition. Did you know that your DNA still carries traces of these other humans? Many modern humans have up to 2% Neanderthal genes in their genetic code. People of Pacific Island descent carry even more Denisovan DNA, some up to 6%. These genetic souvenirs tell us an intimate story. Our ancestors didn't just meet these other humans, they had children with them. Somewhere in your family tree stands a Neanderthal ancestor. Their legacy lives on in your very cells, influencing everything from your immune system to how your body processes nutrients. So while Homo sapiens may have been the ultimate survivors in the human story, we carry within us the genetic echoes of those who came before. The last human species standing isn't just Homo sapiens. It's a mosaic of all who came before us, preserved in our DNA for hundreds of generations. When you look in the mirror, you're seeing a body design that conquered the entire planet. But what made our physical form so successful? Imagine standing face to face with a Neanderthal from 40,000 years ago. The differences would be striking. While they had powerful, stocky frames built for the harsh European Ice Age, Homo sapiens evolved a dramatically different physique in the warm savannas of Africa. Our bodies tell the story of adaptation and survival. Homo sapiens developed distinctly slender limbs, longer arms, and especially longer legs than our cousins. This wasn't random chance. This leaner build served a crucial purpose: heat regulation. In the scorching African plains, our ancestors needed to stay cool during long hunts, and these slender limbs helped dissipate heat more efficiently. This seemingly small advantage became crucial when pursuing prey across vast distances. But the most remarkable difference wasn't visible on the outside. It was inside our skulls. While Neanderthals actually had slightly larger brains than early Homo sapiens, our brains were structurally different. Our foreheads rose vertically rather than sloping backward, creating more space for the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for complex planning, social behavior, and creativity. And here's something fascinating. Our faces changed dramatically too. Early human species had large, protruding jaws with powerful muscles attached to prominent brow ridges. But look at your own face. Your jaw is remarkably small, your teeth tiny in comparison, and your brow subtle. This wasn't just about appearance. These changes reflected a profound shift in lifestyle. As we began cooking food and developing more sophisticated tools to process what we ate, we simply didn't need those massive grinding jaws anymore. Energy that once went to powering jaw muscles could now be redirected to our growing brains. Our smaller faces also allowed for more precise control of facial muscles, critical for the intricate sounds of complex language. Now picture this remarkable contrast. A Neanderthal stood about 5 feet 5 inches tall on average, with a barrel chest, powerful arms, and enormous strength. They were perfectly adapted for close-quarters hunting and surviving brutal cold. A Homo sapiens, meanwhile, stood taller at around 5 feet 9 inches, with a narrower chest, less muscle mass, but greater endurance and heat tolerance. When our ancestors began their epic migration out of Africa around 70,000 years ago, this body design proved remarkably versatile. Those long legs carried them across deserts and mountains. Their efficient cooling system worked equally well when modified with cultural innovations like clothing for colder climates. Their dexterous hands with precision grip created ever more sophisticated tools. And here's a stunning twist in our physical story. We weren't just competing with other human species, we were blending with them. When Homo sapiens arrived in Europe and encountered Neanderthals, these meetings sometimes led to offspring. Today, many of us carry Neanderthal genes that influence everything from our immune systems to how our bodies process nutrients. Some of these genes even helped Homo sapiens adapt to colder environments faster than evolution alone would have allowed. The body that conquered the world wasn't just about raw strength or speed. It was a perfect balance of adaptability, efficiency, and potential. A form that could thrive in virtually any environment when paired with our extraordinary minds and social capabilities. The human body you inhabit today is the result of hundreds of thousands of years of successful adaptation, truly a masterpiece of evolutionary design. Imagine this: 45,000 years ago, in what we now call Europe, two intelligent species of humans encountered each other for the first time. On one side, the Neanderthals, masters of their Ice Age domain for over 300,000 years. On the other, newcomers from Africa, Homo sapiens, our direct ancestors. This wasn't just any meeting. It was perhaps the most consequential encounter in human history. Two different kinds of humans, each with their own languages, technologies, and ways of life, suddenly sharing the same hunting grounds, the same caves, the same world. The Neanderthals weren't the brutish cavemen of old stereotypes. Recent discoveries have shattered this myth completely. They had brains as large as, or even slightly larger than our own. They crafted sophisticated tools, controlled fire, built shelters, and even created art. In the cold, harsh environments of Ice Age Europe, they were the undisputed kings and queens for hundreds of thousands of years. But within a remarkably short time after our ancestors arrived, just a few thousand years, the Neanderthals vanished forever. Their disappearance remains one of the greatest mysteries in human evolution. What happened in those critical millennia when two human species shared the planet? Several theories attempt to explain this extinction event. The first suggests straightforward competition. Homo sapiens may have simply been more efficient hunters, better at securing resources, or more adaptable to changing environments. Small advantages compound over time. Perhaps our ancestors could throw spears more accurately from a distance, making hunting less dangerous. Or maybe their more diverse diet gave them an edge during harsh winters. A second, darker theory proposes direct conflict, warfare between the species. While we have limited evidence of violent encounters, territorial disputes are common in nature. Early Homo sapiens may have aggressively pushed Neanderthals out of prime territories through force. Imagine the terror of Neanderthal families forced to retreat into increasingly marginal lands as these strange new humans advanced. Disease presents another compelling explanation. When Homo sapiens migrated out of Africa, they likely carried pathogens that Neanderthals had never encountered. Much like European diseases devastated Native American populations thousands of years later, our ancestors may have unwittingly brought invisible killers that Neanderthals had no immunity against. Climate change also played a significant role. The period when Neanderthals vanished coincided with severe climate fluctuations. While they had survived previous cold snaps, the combination of changing climate and competition from a new human species might have been too much to overcome. But here's the fascinating twist in this ancient tale. The Neanderthals didn't completely disappear. Look at your own DNA. Unless your ancestors are exclusively from sub-Saharan Africa, you likely carry between 1 and 4% Neanderthal genes in your genome. Our species didn't just replace Neanderthals, we absorbed them through interbreeding. This genetic legacy tells us something profound about our shared history. Those encounters weren't just about conflict, they also involved cooperation, curiosity, and even love. Neanderthal genes continue to influence human health today, affecting everything from our immune responses to how we adapt to high altitudes and cold environments. Now let's consider an extraordinary question. What if the outcome had been different? What if Neanderthals had survived and Homo sapiens had vanished instead? It's not as far-fetched as it might seem. Neanderthals had already proved their resilience by thriving in Ice Age Europe for hundreds of millennia. In this alternate history, would Neanderthals have eventually built cities, developed writing, and created advanced technologies? Would they view us as the primitive cousins who couldn't compete? Would museums display Homo sapiens skeletons as evolutionary dead ends, while Neanderthal scientists pondered what went wrong with our species? We'll never know for certain. But this thought experiment reminds us how contingent our dominance on this planet really is. The victory of Homo sapiens wasn't inevitable. It was the result of countless factors, some within our control, others mere chance. So what do you think? Did you know we had children with Neanderthals? If you're enjoying this video, hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Homo sapiens were fair in their conquest of the planet? Would a world dominated by Neanderthals have been better or worse than our own? Let's discuss this fascinating alternate history together. Imagine two human species living side by side 40,000 years ago. Both intelligent, both using tools, both surviving in harsh environments. Yet within a few thousand years, only one would remain. What gave Homo sapiens the decisive edge over our cousins like the Neanderthals? The answer isn't in our muscles or even our slightly different brains. It's in what those brains created, language and culture. When we think about human evolution, we often focus on physical changes, our upright posture, our dexterous hands, our larger brains. But the truly revolutionary development wasn't physical at all. It was invisible, intangible. yet more powerful than any stone tool or spear. I'm talking about complex language. Think about this. Neanderthals likely had some form of communication. They may have used sounds, gestures, perhaps even simple words, but somewhere between 70,000 and 50,000 years ago, something extraordinary happened in the minds of Homo sapiens. Our ancestors developed fully articulated language with grammar, abstract concepts, and infinite creative potential. This wasn't just a small improvement, it was a cognitive revolution that changed everything. Suddenly, our ancestors could communicate about things that didn't exist yet. They could say, "Tomorrow we'll go hunting by the river, and if we see the large mammoth, we'll use the new spear technique." They could coordinate in groups of dozens or even hundreds, far beyond the natural social limits of other primates. Here's a fascinating detail. When archaeologists examine Neanderthal sites, they typically find evidence of small groups, rarely more than 20 individuals. But Homo sapiens sites from the same period show evidence of much larger gatherings, sometimes hundreds of people coming together. The difference: language allowed Homo sapiens to build trust and cooperation beyond their immediate family circles. Language also enabled something remarkable: the ability to share and preserve knowledge across generations. Imagine an elder Homo sapiens telling children about a devastating drought that happened 50 years earlier, long before those children were born. They could learn survival strategies without experiencing the threat firsthand. Our species created a collective memory that grew with each generation. But language wasn't our only advantage. Around 40,000 years ago, something even more extraordinary emerged: symbolic culture. The walls of caves across Europe and Asia suddenly exploded with images of animals, hunting scenes, and mysterious symbols. At sites like Lascaux in France and Altamira in Spain, our ancestors created masterpieces that still move us emotionally today. These weren't just idle doodles. They represented a profound shift in consciousness, the ability to create and understand symbols, to make one thing represent another. A painting of a bison wasn't just decoration, it might have been part of a ritual, a teaching tool, or a record of successful hunts. Our ancestors were no longer just living in the physical world, they were creating meaning. And here's a fascinating behind-the-scenes historical detail many people don't know. The first jewelry appeared long before cave paintings. Archaeological sites in Morocco and South Africa have revealed shell beads that were carefully perforated and strung together as necklaces over 100,000 years ago. Think about that. Status and social identity already mattered to our ancestors 100 millennia ago. These weren't just pretty decorations. They were social markers, ways of saying I belong to this group, or I have high status in our community. When different bands of Homo sapiens encountered each other, these cultural signals helped them identify potential allies or mates. Culture wasn't just artistic expression, it was a social technology that helped our species cooperate on an unprecedented scale. Religion and myth emerged from this same symbolic revolution. Our ancestors began to imagine spirits, gods, and supernatural forces governing the world around them. While we can't know exactly what early humans believed, archaeological evidence suggests ritual burials with grave goods, implying belief in an afterlife, dating back at least 100,000 years. These shared myths served a crucial evolutionary purpose. They allowed complete strangers who believed the same stories to trust one another and cooperate. Imagine two bands of Homo sapiens meeting for the first time. If they discovered they worshipped the same animal spirit or followed the same taboos, they immediately had common ground for alliance and trade. Language and cultural innovation created a feedback loop that accelerated our species' development. New ideas could spread rapidly across vast distances. Innovations in one group could be adopted by another. While genetic evolution works across thousands of generations, cultural evolution can happen within a single lifetime. This explains one of the most puzzling aspects of human history. Why did Homo sapiens suddenly explode out of Africa and across the globe after existing for over 200,000 years? The answer seems to be this cognitive and cultural revolution. Once our ancestors developed complex language and symbolic thought, they gained an insurmountable advantage over every other species, including other humans. The tragic irony for Neanderthals is that they may have been individually just as intelligent as Homo sapiens. A lone Neanderthal might have been stronger and possibly just as clever as a lone Homo sapiens. But they lacked our capacity for collective intelligence, the ability to pool knowledge, coordinate in large numbers, and preserve information across generations. It wasn't about individual brilliance, but collective genius. So when you speak, when you tell stories, when you create art or participate in cultural traditions, you're wielding the same secret weapon that allowed our ancestors to outcompete every other human species on Earth. Language and culture weren't just nice additions to human life. They were the revolutionary technologies that made us who we are. And that legacy continues today. Right now, you're participating in it, absorbing information that was unknown to you before, adding it to humanity's collective knowledge. Our species' greatest superpower isn't our physical strength or even our individual intelligence. It's our unparalleled ability to learn from each other, to build on what came before, and to imagine what could be. For nearly 300,000 years, our ancestors lived as hunter-gatherers, following the rhythms of nature, tracking animal migrations and gathering seasonal plants. Their lives were tough, but surprisingly balanced. Anthropologists who've studied modern hunter-gatherer groups found they typically worked just 4 to 5 hours daily, spent abundant time with family, and enjoyed remarkable physical health. But roughly 12,000 years ago, something extraordinary happened, perhaps the most consequential revolution in human history. In multiple places around the world, almost simultaneously in historical terms, our ancestors began to do something that no human species had ever done before. They started planting seeds and waiting for them to grow. This agricultural revolution sounds like a simple change, but it fundamentally transformed what it meant to be human. Think about this. For over 95% of our species' existence, we lived as nomadic foragers. Then almost overnight in evolutionary terms, we became farmers tied to specific plots of land. The story of how this happened is fascinating. In the Fertile Crescent, the regions spanning modern Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and Jordan, wild grains like wheat and barley grew naturally in abundant fields. Our ancestors initially just harvested these wild plants. But over generations, they noticed something. Seeds that fell near their temporary camps sprouted the following season. Eventually, they began deliberately planting the largest, tastiest seeds, unintentionally initiating the first genetic modification of crops. Similar stories unfolded independently across the globe. In China, rice domestication began along the Yangtze River. In Mesoamerica, early farmers cultivated corn from a wild grass called teosinte. In the Andes, potatoes became the staple crop. In each case, humans transformed wild plants into something entirely new through thousands of years of selective breeding. But here's the surprising truth that historians and archaeologists have uncovered. This revolution wasn't necessarily a step forward for human well-being. When we examine the skeletal remains of early agricultural peoples, we find something shocking. They were significantly less healthy than their hunter-gatherer ancestors. They were shorter, suffered more nutritional deficiencies, had worse teeth, and showed more signs of physical stress. Why would humans adopt a lifestyle that initially made their lives worse? The answer is one of history's great ironies. Agriculture produced more food per acre, allowing populations to grow, but the quality of life for individuals declined. A successful hunter-gatherer band might include 50 people with plenty to eat. A farming village could support hundreds living on a monotonous diet of grains. The agricultural revolution wasn't about improving individual lives, it was about increasing the total number of humans the land could support. More food meant more children, which meant more farmers, which meant more food in a cycle that transformed our relationship with the planet. This new sedentary lifestyle triggered another momentous development, the emergence of the first true cities. Around 10,000 years ago, places like Jericho in modern-day Palestine and Çatalhöyük in Turkey became home to thousands of people living together in permanent settlements, something completely unprecedented in human history. These early cities weren't just bigger villages, they represented an entirely new social organization. For the first time, not everyone needed to produce food. Some people could specialize in crafting tools, building structures, or trading goods. This division of labor sparked explosive innovation. Within a few thousand years, humans invented pottery, metallurgy, the wheel, and writing, technologies that had never emerged during hundreds of thousands of years of hunter-gatherer existence. But cities also brought unprecedented inequality. In hunter-gatherer societies, differences in wealth and status were minimal. You couldn't accumulate much more than you could carry. But agricultural societies created storable wealth and property that could be inherited. Some families accumulated control over the best land or the most resources, while others became dependent laborers. The most dramatic expression of this new inequality was the emergence of the first empires. Around 5,000 years ago, in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley, something revolutionary appeared. Centralized states controlling vast territories through organized military force. The pharaohs of ancient Egypt commanded such wealth and power that they could mobilize thousands of workers to build the pyramids, massive monuments that were essentially elaborate tombs for a single ruler. These early empires developed technologies and social systems that still shape our world today. In ancient Egypt, sophisticated irrigation systems transformed the Nile floodplain into one of the most productive agricultural regions on Earth. The pharaoh's administrators created complex writing systems to keep track of grain stores and tax collections. Their priests developed astronomical knowledge to predict the annual flooding of the Nile. A fascinating behind-the-scenes detail. The ancient Egyptians invented the 365-day calendar that's the direct ancestor of our modern calendar. They needed precisely timed agricultural cycles, so they divided the year into 3 seasons of 4 months, each with 30 days, plus 5 extra days of festivals at the end of the year. As centuries passed, technological innovations accelerated. The Romans didn't just conquer the Mediterranean world through military might, they built an empire on engineering genius. Their roads stretched for over 50,000 miles, connecting distant provinces. Their aqueducts brought fresh water to cities housing hundreds of thousands of people. Their concrete, a formula lost after the empire's fall and only rediscovered in modern times, allowed them to build structures like the Pantheon, whose unreinforced concrete dome remained the world's largest for over 13 centuries. But these magnificent achievements came with devastating costs that are often overlooked in triumphant historical narratives. The Egyptian pyramids and Roman monuments were built not just through engineering brilliance, but through massive exploitation of human labor, much of it enslaved. The glittering wealth of emperors and pharaohs was extracted from conquered peoples and oppressed workers. Even more significantly, our species' domination of the planet through agriculture and cities triggered environmental transformations that continue to accelerate today. Ancient Mesopotamian civilization collapsed partly due to soil salinization from their irrigation practices. The majestic cedars of Lebanon, once covering vast mountain ranges, were almost entirely cleared by ancient civilizations seeking timber. Roman silver mines poisoned the atmosphere with lead at levels that wouldn't be seen again until the Industrial Revolution. Which brings us to perhaps the most profound question about our species' journey. In just 10,000 years, we've gone from nomadic tribes to a global civilization of billions, capable of splitting atoms and traveling to other planets. But at what cost? This transformation represents less than 3% of our species' existence, yet it has alienated us from the natural world that shaped us for hundreds of thousands of years. Our bodies evolved for movement, diverse diets, and close-knit social groups. Yet many of us now sit in artificial environments, eat processed foods, and interact through digital screens rather than face-to-face. The pace of change continues to accelerate. Consider that for most of human history, each generation lived much like their grandparents. My own great-grandparents were born before telephones, automobiles, or electric lights became common. My grandparents witnessed the spread of television and commercial air travel. My parents saw the rise of personal computers and mobile phones. And today's children are growing up with artificial intelligence and virtual reality. Each technological leap has brought remarkable benefits. Longer lifespans, reduced infant mortality, greater material abundance. Yet we've also created existential threats that no previous generation faced. Nuclear weapons, climate change, and biological engineering that could reshape what it means to be human. The story of how we transformed from hunters to world dominators isn't just ancient history. It's the essential context for understanding our present moment. We stand at a crossroads where our technological powers have never been greater, yet the systems we've built to harness those powers may be undermining the planetary life support systems we depend upon. Perhaps the most important lesson from this extraordinary journey is that nothing about our current way of living is inevitable or natural for our species. We've reinvented what it means to be human multiple times, from hunter-gatherers to farmers to citizens of industrial and now digital societies. The question isn't whether we'll transform again, but whether we'll do so wisely, learning from both our triumphs and our catastrophic mistakes. As you consider our species' remarkable journey from small bands of African hunter-gatherers to a planetary civilization, ask yourself, what kind of world dominators will we choose to be in the chapters of human history that are still being written? Homo sapiens have faced countless challenges throughout our evolutionary journey. We've survived ice ages, competed with other human species, and conquered every environment on Earth. From small bands of hunters in Africa to a global civilization of billions, we've proven ourselves to be the most adaptable and successful species in human history. But now, we face a challenge unlike any before: ourselves. For the first time in Earth's history, a single species has the power to either destroy its own habitat or transcend it entirely. We've created tools of unprecedented power: nuclear weapons that could end civilization in hours, technologies that are rapidly altering the planet's climate, and artificial intelligence that might one day surpass our own capabilities. Yet alongside these existential threats, we've also developed the means to expand beyond our planetary cradle. Our robots explore Mars, our telescopes peer into distant galaxies, and our scientists dream of colonies among the stars. We stand at a crossroads that will define not just our future, but potentially the future of life itself in our corner of the universe. The same intelligence that allowed us to outcompete the Neanderthals and build magnificent civilizations now presents us with a choice. Will we be the first species to cause our own extinction? Or will we be the first earthborn creatures to carry life to other worlds? The next chapter of human evolution isn't just about biological change. It's about the choices we make as a species. Every great civilization in history has faced its moment of truth. The Egyptians, the Romans, the Maya, all reached heights of achievement before facing dramatic collapses. But we're different. Our civilization is global. There are no other regions to absorb our collapse, no other cultures to preserve our knowledge if we fail. This time it's all or nothing, extinction or transcendence. The stakes have never been higher, and here's what makes our story truly extraordinary. We're aware of the challenge. Unlike the dinosaurs who never saw their asteroid coming, we can see our threats, understand them, and potentially overcome them. We're the first species that can consciously choose its own destiny. The same attributes that allowed us to survive when other human species vanished, our ability to cooperate, to innovate, to adapt, these are the very tools we'll need to face our greatest challenge yet. So what future will we choose? The next chapter of the human story is being written right now, and you're part of it. If you've enjoyed this journey through human evolution, don't forget to hit that like button and share this video with someone who loves exploring our remarkable past. Subscribe to The Dawn of Humankind for more fascinating stories about our species' incredible journey from African savannas to the threshold of the stars. And let us know in the comments, do you think humanity will overcome its challenges and reach for the stars? Or are we destined to become another cautionary tale in the cosmic story? Join the conversation below. This is The Dawn of Humankind, where we explore who we were, who we are, and who we might become. Until next time, keep looking up at those stars. They might just be humanity's next home.